وصحبه وسلم. The reality is that we are watching ethnic cleansing on live stream. We are watching it being streamed live. This isn't reports that are emerging. As a result of Mu'taz Azayza and Khudari and Muhammad al-Qurt, and these are Palestinian Twitter accounts, we are able to see the international order being leveraged to provide impunity for the Zionists to massacre and ethnically cleanse Gaza, in the hope that they will annex Gaza and permanently turn the Palestinians away from their homes. We are watching one of the greatest atrocities since the Holocaust of World War II, and potentially a situation. It could rival the Holocaust in the viciousness of the attempt to exterminate an entire people for no other reason than they happen to be of a particular ethnicity and a religion. The only crime the Palestinians are guilty of in the eyes of the Zionists is that they are Palestinian. And they have a right to the land that they lay claim to. When Israel decided to lash out against the Palestinians, the first thing that they did was to try and paint October 7th like it came out of nowhere. You know, the starting point that they insisted on this conflict, everything began on October 7th. Today I want to look at this claim. They didn't want to talk about the week before October 7th. Netanyahu stood in the United Nations with a smirk on his face, held up a map that he said will establish peace in the region. This was his Middle East vision. And in this map, there was a very important omission. Something was erased that Netanyahu believed needed to be erased for him to achieve his vision of peace. What he erased was the state of Palestine. He erased the Palestinians from that map. And he told the United Nations, this is the solution to the Middle East. In the same breath, he said, normalization of ties with Saudi Arabia will be the greatest deal since the Cold War. And just to be absolutely clear, normalization is a term that they use that means what? Arab states like Saudi Arabia are okay with the fact that Palestine is erased from the map. Their people are given no rights and they are eradicated. That is what normalization stands for. So the Israeli ambassador to the UN then told Cannes Television on the same day, he was asked, will the right-wing government sign the normalization of ties with an Arab state like Saudi Arabia? And the Israeli ambassador said, quote, normalization with Saudi Arabia means the complete Arab abandonment of the Palestinians. And that will provide an opportunity that the government will not be able to resist. And when they see these opportunities, they will sign off immediately on normalization of ties. In that same week, the week before, Netanyahu sat with the Turkish president, Erdogan, for the first time since this leader came to power, 2003. He's so-called Sultan of the Muslim world. From the first time since 2003. They take this picture and they show it to the Palestinians. Look, your Sultan, the Turkish leader, is sitting with our leader. Everybody's abandoning you. 2 months before October 7th, the UAE, Arab ambassador to the United States of America, tells Brookings Institute or Carnegie, has normalization between your country and Israel achieved anything for the Palestinian people? He replies, normalization has achieved nothing for the Palestinian people. And we have no leverage over Israel for the sake of the Palestinians. But that's not our business anymore. It is now the business of the countries that will normalize with Israelis. But let me tell you how exciting it is that we and Israel are going to have trade agreements. We're going to have increased flights between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi. Netanyahu returns to Tel Aviv the week before October 7th, absolutely convinced that this is the time to finally exterminate the Palestinians, expand the borders. So far, what have we seen? Saudi Arabia, number 1. Turkey, number 2. And UAE, number 3. All, of course, are happy with the normalization of ties. or okay with the eradication of Palestine. This is 1 month before October 7th. Netanyahu returns to Tel Aviv. And he begins to order a military border, a build-up of military in the Jenin refugee camp in 2019. Let me tell you, Netanyahu wanted to eradicate this refugee camp. Even the one that's talking about normalization of ties. You know what happened in 2019? When he was trying to send his military forces to a refugee camp, Donald Trump came in and said, "Yeah, Jahil, you're going to ruin it. We're on the verge of signing the treaty with Saudi Arabia and UAE, and you're going to go and wreck it by eradicating the refugee camp? What's wrong with you?" The second time a normalization occurred without a peace agreement, why would you ruin it by eradicating a refugee camp? Why don't you stop the annexation just for a while? Let this leader sign and get the Islamic scholars to say that normalization is halal, because it allows it to stop the annexation. And then Netanyahu said, "Okay, I'll stop." And he told the military to move back. Once they signed it, Netanyahu wanted to go to Jenin again, refugee camp. Unfortunately, he was toppled from power, and the refugee camp was safe. The person that came after Netanyahu sent his forces to the refugee camp, but he failed to do so because the IDF got too excited. They killed Shari Abu Akla, the Jazeera journalist, in broad daylight. He was an American citizen. As a result, they could not continue killing the refugees in that refugee camp. This time, Netanyahu got power again. Now he said 3 of the major Muslim nations are seeking ties with Israel, especially ties with Israel. Normalization has been signed. The Muslim nations have abandoned them. Let's go and take the Jenin refugee camp. October 7th was not in a vacuum. Israel was planning to invade the week before. That is why context is important. Many of you, brothers and sisters, have asked me questions after my talks. And I tell you this, you need to know the context behind October 7th to realize what they were planning in the first place. The reason they are trying to ban the river from the sea is because they want to say it themselves. You know the 2 blue lines on the Israeli flag? What does it represent? The river to the sea. At this point, the October 7 attack happened in history. October 7 happens. One thing I will say, Ibadallah, do not hesitate to say that the killing of civilians is haram, regardless of who does it. Because when Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu was sent by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was sent on a mission, Khalid bin Walid is reported in the seerah to have transgressed and killed civilians. When the news came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he do? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Allahumma inni abra'u ilayka ma fa'ala Khalid." Allah, I am innocent of the transgression that my general has done, Khalid bin Walid. The reason that Islam is superior to anything else is because we hold ourselves to account. No matter who does it. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ بِقَوْلٍ عَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ بِالتَّقْوَى. Do not let your hatred, your racism of a people, or their hatred of you, don't let that hatred make you swerve from justice. Be just. Even if they're your enemies, be just. To say that the killing of civilians does not undermine the resistance. Don't be hesitant in this regard. After October 7th, Netanyahu panics. Netanyahu pitched himself to the Israelis that I am the security. Vote for me, because I will make sure that the Palestinians will have a state. 2-state solution. Suddenly, everyone's warning him. If you keep going on this trajectory, you will normalize over the heads of the Palestinians. Something will explode. Bloomberg wrote about it. Washington Post wrote about it. King Abdullah wrote it. Sisi. Wama Adrak warned him. Egyptian Prime Minister warned him. They're trying to blame the Palestinians for the October 7th attack. 1 week after October 7th, 80% of Israelis, according to the polls in Tel Aviv, blame Netanyahu for the problem. The Israelis were taken to the streets 1 week after, against Netanyahu. It took Netanyahu days to form a war cabinet, Because the opposition party believed that the war was about Netanyahu's future, not Israel's future. Netanyahu is not fighting for a two-state solution. That is why Netanyahu was desperate at that time. Now you have a particular individual in the United States who became very excited when October 7 happened. His name is Anthony Blinken. Anthony Blinken was so excited that he went on a plane and he went to Tel Aviv. I am not here as a Secretary of State to the United States. I'm here as a Jew. Blinken forgot that the Middle East never did the Holocaust. The Middle East and the Arabs were not responsible for the Holocaust. Who was responsible for the Holocaust? Who? The pilgrims and massacred the Jews. This never happened in Riyadh, Jeddah, Poland. It was the Europeans that caused the Holocaust, not us. They gassed the Jews, put the Jews under the Holocaust, massacred the Jews, and drove them out of Europe. And even the Balfour Declaration, which was trying to get the aliens, as they call them, out of their country. They didn't want them in the British Empire. Blinken forgot that when the white supremacist Europe killed the Jews, they fled to where? Where did the Jews go after the Holocaust? Where did they go? World War II, where did they go? They went to the Muslim lands. You kicked out the Jews, we helped them. Muslim Andalusia, Muslim Tunisia, Muslim Morocco. It was here where they found a haven. Even Sarajevo, Bosnia. The only city in Europe that is called the Jerusalem of Europe is a city that was established or ruled predominantly by the Muslims. Because only under Muslim rule was the objective mean of coexistence allowed. Andalusia, Sarajevo, and Jerusalem. Umar bin al-Khattab is the one that brought the Jews back. So Blinken forgot all of this. I'm a Jew, I'm here. I'm here to help Israel. Blinken was supposed to go to Tel Aviv and go straight back to Washington. What did he do? When he met Netanyahu, he told them, the pilot of the plane, I need to go to 3 or 4 Arab states. I need to go to multiple Arab countries after this. Why do you think Blinken is going to Arab capitals? Why is he going? Washington Post reported. It said, Blinken went to, quote, seek help to tack down on public hatred. Blinken and Netanyahu sat together and they identified a problem. They found the problem that Ibrahim Mubarak, they are raising the voices of the Palestinians. This might cause a problem for the ethnic cleansing that we want to do. If these voices are heard from the different Twitter accounts, if these voices are heard from the different Facebook accounts, if these voices are heard from not the mainstream news channels, but if these voices are heard, these two leaders are saying that we are not going to be able to ethnically cleanse and take land. We need help. We need people to be quiet. So Mohammed bin Salman, the president of Saudi Arabia, says, don't worry, I've got you. I've got you, Israel, I've got your back. The chief imam of a country, he says, open the Quran to the scholars and find me an ayah, find me a fatwa that tells Muslims not to talk about Gaza and Palestine. This is in Saudi Arabia. Allahumma give victory to Gaza, but don't talk about Gaza. Don't talk about things you don't know, especially this fitna of Gaza. Fitna of Gaza. And obey your leaders because they trust them. And obey the scholars that have been appointed to you. That it is la yajuz. It is an issue that you don't know. Trust that your ruler knows what they're doing. Trust that when Israel cuts the connections on Gaza and gives its ground invasion, there is hikmah in having Shakira dancing in the capital of Riyadh. Trust that this is a way out of the Zionist plots. Some scholars said, yes, sami'na wa ata'na. But Sheikh, what do we do about the concert of Shakira and the concert of Justin Bieber? We are in the Holy Land after all. The Sheikh said, don't attend the concert. Don't attend the concert. another country, they released a statement in which they blamed the Palestinians, Muslim country. Another Muslim country suggested that we take all the weapons off the Palestinians and we demilitarize them. Blinken went back to Washington and told Biden, I had received assurances from the big three, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Turkey. We're fine. We can go ahead. They even found an Islamic ruling that a scholar has given. Biden was so confident. You know what he did on October the 20th? He proposed a bill. Look it up. Biden, the President of the United States, proposed a bill on October the 20th. Do you know what the bill said? We need money to give to neighboring nations to take in the Palestinians. Let's talk about this. If we take in the Palestinians to USA, it will cost us money. Right? So what we'll use is American taxpayer money. And we will give it to Egypt and Jordan. And let them take all the refugees. Biden is desperate to seize this opportunity. This man, he said that if there is no Israel, I will create Israel. He sees a golden opportunity for ethnic cleansing. And he offers that money. You know what the problem was? Sisi, the Egyptian prime minister, is terrified to open the borders. He's terrified. They've got enough of a refugee problem from Palestine. Do you think he's going to open the borders? Sisi, the president of Egypt, stops any refugees from coming in. He doesn't want to open the borders. Because if he fears, if he opens the border, in 2015, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, just put on Google, Sisi is more harsh on us than the Palestinians. This article will come up. In 2015, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Israelis protested to the Americans and said, this leader of Egypt is more harsh than the Palestinians than anyone before him. The president before him of Egypt used to shut the borders, but they would leave the tunnels open. So that if the Palestinians get into a real problem, they can go through the tunnels into Egypt. This president, Sisi, what he did was, he destroyed the tunnels and he closed the borders. This guy's even worse. He's squeezing them to the point where the Palestinians will go to war. So the reason he wants the borders to close is because he wants to spite the Israelis? No. The reason he wants the borders closed is because he's terrified of what you will say about him in your history book. That is why I'm talking about it now. This is history in the making. This is history in the making. This is what the presidents of the so-called states of UAE, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia have done. Egypt have done. SubhanAllah. This is plain for us to see. Jordanian, let's talk about them. King Abdullah II was asked, please take some of the refugees from Palestine. 50% of Jordanians are Palestinians. I used to live there. A year ago, he said Hussein bin Abdullah, his own son, tried to do a coup on him. Why? Because he wanted custodianship of Al-Aqsa, and rumor has it that he might hand over Aqsa in a silver platter to the Israelis. Because Muslims don't want justice, they want money in their pockets, and they want entertainment from Shakira. They have the ability to pray Isha after the concert is over. So the Jordanian king basically says, I am not taking any refugees from Palestine, no matter how much money you give me. So now, on the 28th of October, Biden comes out and says, we will not accept the displacement of Palestinians. The whole world thinks that Biden did this out of the goodness of his heart. Do you think he did this out of the goodness of his heart? Honestly, with the history that I have just explained to you, do you think he just said, we do not accept the displacement of Palestinians because he was feeling generous at that time? No, it is because Egypt and Jordan said, we're not going to do it. You can give us millions of dollars, we won't do it. Explicitly, we are going to fund the neighboring countries. We'll give you money. Just take the refugees from Palestine. The only reason that he made that statement was because those neighboring countries, Egypt and Jordan, refused. The reason I mention this is because this timeline of events is before October 7th and directly after October 7th. Blinken, in the first week of the conflict, he banned the State Department from using the word ceasefire. Did you know it was law in the United States for them to not use the word ceasefire. It was haramun alaykum. Or anything that suggests a halt to the fighting. In the first week after October 7th, Blinken spoke to the Turkish Foreign Ministry. You know what he said? And they tweeted on his account. They discussed the potential ceasefire. And then they deleted the tweet in half an hour. It was probably a poor intern that was told to look after the social media account, told the truth. And then Blinken came in, what are you doing? Don't talk about ceasefire. I want ethnic cleansing. I want the Palestinian genocide to happen. And then they took down the post. How did Blinken go from banning people to use the word ceasefire, to humanitarian pause, to a hostage truce, to talk about sustainable ceasefire? How did this happen? This man, from the history leading up to October 7 and 2 weeks after October 7, hates Palestine's guts. How did he change his opinion? I ask you this question today. When he went to Netanyahu in Tel Aviv in that visit, we go back to the beginning. When he sat with Netanyahu, they said the problem is not the Muslim nation. The Muslim nations are not going to do anything. The Muslim leaders, are they the problem? They're like, no, Muslim leaders are with us. No problems. Who's the problem? Their scholars are telling Muslims not to worry about Gaza. The Muslims are not listening. The Muslim average person is using social media to amplify the Palestinian issue. The problem is the algorithm that we have in X and Twitter and YouTube. And once upon a time, the most popular post was dancing. Now, 1.9 billion Muslims, the most popular post is Palestine. As a result of the algorithm, Muslims sitting in their homes, and every night, tears and heartbreak, desperately trying on their phones to shout on social media, free Palestine, rescue Gaza, stop the war, hashtag Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Not 1 million, 2 million, 100 million, 1.9 billion Muslims. The algorithm, now billions. At the same time, we're doing hashtag Palestine. So when Dave, Michelle, and Sarah in Australia opened their Twitter account, they didn't see the latest episode of Love Island. They saw the first tweet was the death of babies in Gaza. Second tweet was the genocidal remarks of Israel. The third tweet was the destruction of Gaza. Fourth tweet, ethnic cleansing. Fifth tweet, we will not stop. The reaction was, an average Australian person said to his mates, do you see what I'm seeing on my feed? They're killing babies. I thought the Israelis were the good guys. It turns out they're just as vicious and barbaric. And this resulted in a change in opinion in Australia, UK, USA, the entire world. I grew up, and then eventually the public opinion got to such a state that in the middle of USA, a young teenage girl posts a video saying what? I grew up in a Zionist state until TikTok delivered the voice of Palestinians. And I can't unsee what I've seen. Now I'm pro-Palestine. And this resulted in Biden falling in the polls. Now he is behind in 5 or 6 swing states. If you read the Reuters article, it says the reason Biden is falling in the polls is not just because of the economy. The reason the polls are unprecedentedly against Biden, the first time a president falls in the polls as a result of a foreign policy issued, which United States don't even have troops on the ground in Palestine. Do they have troops on the ground? No, they have no troops on the ground, unlike Afghanistan. But here, he is falling in the polls for the first time in history. Foreign policy issue. Americans don't like ethnic cleansing. This time in the polls. Biden supporters are dropping over an issue where American troops aren't even on the ground. In other words, it's the algorithm and the elevation of the Palestinian voices where you, average Muslims, broke the stronghold. You broke Israel's monopoly. You are the ones that caused the opinion to change. It is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so that in those swing states, the Muslims have the deciding vote. Axios, the Israeli paper, and Politico, they reported that if Biden loses a sliver of the Muslim votes in Michigan or Georgia or Pennsylvania, these swing states, if he loses a sliver of Muslim votes, he loses the election. What Blinken was terrified of was not the Crown Prince of Jordan. He wasn't terrified of Saudi Arabia. He was terrified the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Netanyahu, broached that on the table and said, ordinary Muslims are affecting our ability to commit genocide with their phones, with their protests. This is the victory of the Muslims today. Blinken says to Netanyahu, we have a problem. As a result of these rich Muslims who are doing da'wah, and poor Muslims that are doing da'wah, as a result of them raising the voices of the Palestinians, and the algorithm is favoring, and even when Instagram is shadow banning accounts, hashtag Palestine banned, and the former head of Meta, Facebook, in North Africa, he said that social media companies can restrict the hashtag if it's used millions of times, but they can't restrict it if it's used billions of times. That's too much for the processing system, even of Facebook and Meta. So Blinken says to Netanyahu that Biden is a bit concerned about these polls because we might lose to Trump, and it might be because of the Muslims. Blinken says, why don't we rephrase what ethnic cleansing means? Why don't we make it look merciful? So what we'll do is, I've got a great idea. And Netanyahu's like, please tell me this brilliant idea of yours. He says, before we bomb them, we'll give them a warning. Before we kill them, we'll tell them we're coming to stab you. We would like to bring to your attention, public service announcement, that we're about to level your home. But we don't want you to die in the bomb. So we've got this map of different sectors, and you need to leave your home and go to one of these humanitarian corridors under the protection of the IDF. What do you think? Netanyahu said to Blinken, genius. This isn't a plot by Biden to lure me into a ceasefire. You think their hearts are united? قُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى. Their hearts are divided. Know this and know this well. The opposition leaders, the enemies to the Muslims, their hearts are also divided. Biden and Netanyahu are not even on the same page. You may think so. Netanyahu told Blinken to make sure that this is not a reason for the war to stop. Is Biden trying to stop the war? You think their hearts are united? قُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى. Their hearts are divided. And if you notice, when the humanitarian pause happened, the ceasefire happened, when Biden came off the plane, when he was asked, what happened with this humanitarian pause? I thought you told us not to use the word ceasefire, not to use the word pause. What happened? He said the humanitarian cause came too late. He changes his view. Netanyahu was resisting the humanitarian pause. It was you! Why did Blinken go from refusing to call for a pause to going to a pause of humanitarian? Do you think it's because Blinken saw the pictures of the dead babies and said, Wallahi, this is too much. You know, we're killing too many of them. These poor kids that are dying, we need to have a pause. Do you think that's what he thought? Do you think Biden just woke up one day and says, too many Palestinians have been killed. I mean, it's gone over 20,000 now. It's too much, guys. The reason that they went from no ceasefire to a humanitarian pause was because a power was brought to bear that made it impossible for them to continue the genocide in the way that Netanyahu wanted. And the power was you, Muslims. You are believed to be strong, but we ourselves look at ourselves as weak. We are not weak. Israel and Blinken feel and believe in Allah's power, in the power of the Muslims. But we Muslims don't know our own power in such a way that it restricts their ability to commit genocide. Some of us turn around and we say we don't have any power. Biden thought that the humanitarian pause would stop the drop in his polls. Why did Biden do it? Biden is a politician. So he didn't want the polls to keep dropping. people to say, we don't want this guy as the president anymore in the United States of America. So what happened after the humanitarian pause? Do you know? What happened to his polls? They dropped even further. CNN reports that Biden told Netanyahu that as a result, quote, of the bombardment of the videos of the atrocities committed in Gaza, you no longer have months for this operation, you only have a matter of weeks. Eli Cohen, the Israeli foreign minister, and said, we probably only have 2 weeks before international pressure mounts on us. The Belgian deputy prime minister came out and said, we need to put sanctions on Israel. Spain said, we are now ready to call for a state of Palestine. Wama adrak. Racist Macron came out and said, we need to have a ceasefire. This is too much. The US tried to establish alliance in the Red Sea. France withdrew. Spain withdrew. Australia withdrew. Because you made it happen. For people to be seen to be standing in genocide, Blinken's strategy changes. You broke it for free. You made Biden buckle. You made Blinken buckle. You made Netanyahu buckle. You made the Israelis buckle until they had no choice but to accept a hostage truce where the fighting was stopped for 7 days. And Netanyahu panicked so much and his allies panicked so much that they called a unilateral press conference. And he said in a hysteria that Netanyahu, if you extend this war, we will bring down your government. Who's saying this? The allies are saying this. Under bin Salman, under the Arab leaders, under Sisi, under the King of Jordan. It is the pressure that you Muslims brought about. You manifested a power. You made Biden say to Netanyahu, I can no longer support you for months. Either hurry up and commit the genocide or we have to withdraw. That is what the hostage truce was. It was you Muslims who made it happen. Not the big states. Not the leaders of the Muslims. Allah give you Muslims the power. Even if you don't appreciate it yourself. We read in the Quran. We love to read ayahs to get the spiritual boost, correct? But we forget that ayahs are also about politics. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Is there any better speech than the one who calls to Allah and does good deeds and says, I am one of the Muslimin? We tend to read this ayah and think this is great. I'm going to take Christmas to my neighbor. My mother does it and we do it as well. I'm going to go give out leaflets on the streets. I've seen people come to Islam as a result of leaflets. Good. Dawah. But dawah goes beyond this into hostile territory, not just neutral territory. And the proof is in the ayah that comes straight after this ayah. وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. Good deed and bad deeds are not equal. They are Islamophobic. And we are anti-Semitic. They are using racist language, doesn't mean we use racist language. They use violence, doesn't mean we use violence. When they capture Italian soldiers, okay? When they capture these soldiers, what do? What is the Libyan liberation fighters said, let's do to them what they did to us. Let's electrocute them and torture them like they tortured us. This is the Muslim saying this. Let's cut off their limbs just like they cut off our limbs. Omar al-Mukhtar replied and said, they are not our teachers. We Muslims do not do what they do to us. Who's our teacher? Netanyahu, Biden, Erdogan. Who's our teacher? Muhammadur Rasulullah. He's our teacher. If they do this to us, we won't do this to them. We won't kill civilians. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن بينك وبينه عداوة. Conduct yourself in a best character in your da'wah. For it may be that the one is your enemy today, tomorrow becomes your warmest ally. Look who Allah is telling you to give da'wah to. Give da'wah to the one that's saying, Israel, Israel. Give da'wah to that person. Islam in this context tells you to have great character. Stand for what is right. Be just. Gentle. Why do you think Islam is raging multiplying in the amount of Muslim converts. Why do you think? After October 7th, what happened? Mu'tazza Azayza. All of these Twitter accounts that are reporting from Palestine in such a way that the one who was pro-Israel yesterday sees the atrocities and he says, I can no longer promote this genocide. Today I am pro-Palestinian. How many have changed the opinions of people? How many of you have seen people? Yesterday I supported Israel. Today I don't support Israel anymore. Today I'm with Palestine. How many people have we seen have changed their views? Yesterday, people said, I support Israel. Now they are questioning the very foundation of the Israeli state. They're reading history books. You could not do this 3 months ago. That is because of your da'wah. Because you raised awareness. How many people have you seen where your enemies were of the Palestinians and now they're marching alongside us? Today they are their warmest allies. This is something that the Quran says it cannot be wrong. In America, non-Muslims that support Israel. Ibn Khaldun says, 1 generation away, if only it would take the action that allows Allah to change the narrative. If only we Muslims understood this. If only we Muslims understand what is happening in front of our eyes today. The entire issue will become crystal clear to us. And brothers and sisters, before we finish today, I want to give you a small glimpse of what we are hoping for. Are we hoping for a ceasefire? Are we hoping for a Palestinian state? What are we hoping for? We are hoping that La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah will be the highest of banners on earth. That's what we're hoping for. Palestine is not just one thing. It is one geographic location. What about the Muslims in all the other areas of the world? What about the entire Muslim lands, huge areas of Muslim lands, millions upon billions of people across the world that we've seen in this issue have turned against themselves? What happens next? Maybe I protest and give khutbahs and give da'wah and tell my children about the massacre that occurred in 2023 in October all the way to December. They didn't even give any kind of humanitarian pause in Christmas and New Year's, which is holy to them. They didn't do any of that. Now, when you report this to your children and you are on your deathbed now, you are now on your deathbed. You did whatever you could. You sent as many pictures as you could. You forwarded as many hashtags as you could. Now you're sitting on your deathbed and you got to see nothing. Palestine was razed to the ground. Who is responsible for the results? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responsible for the results. Did Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam get to see Islam enter into Spain? No. Did he get to see Islam enter into the Australian home? No. Did he get to see Islam enter into New Zealand? Ends of the earth? No. You are not responsible for the result. You are responsible for the actions you did up until the time you died. That is it. And you will be asked on the Day of Judgment, oh so-and-so, son of so-and-so, what did you do when a major historical event was happening while you were breathing? You were comfortable in your air-conditioned homes in the west area of Australia and you did nothing? You will be asked. And let me give you one last picture for you to for this point to be driven home. Inshallah, after our death, I teach some 100 or 150 kids here from Shuk. And sometimes they ask the most brilliant questions. They say, in the various injustices, they ask me sometimes, Ustad, how can these people do these injustices that happen around the world? You know, remember, these are 5 to 15-year-olds. When they do these injustices across the world, they don't get justice in the world. They die, and they see the rich laughing with cars and mansions, and they kill and pillage and commit genocide, and they die rich. How come there's no justice here? But do they not know that there's a justice on the Day of Judgment? So after you die, you have a period of time in the grave. Then you have a period of time on the Day of Judgment. Then you get sent to one of two locations. You can either be sent to Jannah, or you get sent to Jahannam. Now let's say everyone in this room is going to be sent to Jannah. Now in Jannah, once you get past the whole I can live forever, and I have a body that can outlast the greatest superhero that I ever knew. And you get over the fact that you are now in Jannah, and you will stay in Jannah forever. Who would you like to go and meet first among the Jannatis? Maybe the prophets? Maybe the greatest of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maybe you want to go visit him. Now I want to leave you with this picture, and I want you to understand what this picture means. You go and visit the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, around him are gathered a few people. And they ask you, when you approach, you say, Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah. The first time you get to sit with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's sitting in front of you. There's a circle of people around him, Muslims, of different ages. And of different, not different ages, you are going to be 33 years old, everyone will be around 33 years old in Jannah. So different ages and times of the earth. And those people ask you, who are you? Who are you? Which time do you belong to? And you say that we were the group of Muslims that were responsible for the changing of public opinion at the time in 2023 when they made the first major attack on Palestine. We were those group of Muslims. We were responsible for changing public opinion and causing the leaders to start quivering. We were those Muslims. And then you know what will happen after that? There will be another group that will come to visit the Prophet ﷺ after your time. And those people will say, we are the group of Muslims. We are the group of Muslims that actually took over Masjid al-Aqsa. And we want to thank you Muslims for changing the Muslim opinion, the worldwide opinion, the Twitter opinion, the Facebook opinion. We want to thank you Muslims for protesting, for boycotting Israeli products. We want to thank you because you laid down the foundations for us to eventually take and conquer Masjid al-Aqsa. Thank you, Jazakum Allahu khairan, O Muslims that came before our time. Because you laid down the foundations. Now, the same people, non-Muslims, don't trust their own leader. They don't trust their own leader, their own president of the United States, they don't trust him. Now when he comes out and says, another September 11 attack happens, and they want to go into a nation, they're going to be speaking against their own leader. Because of what they've done today. Because of what they have done in this war. The entire world watches as they laugh and kill these people. And so, this is something of a glimpse of Jannah. And if you want to be part of the people that can actually stand next to the Prophet ﷺ and say that we were of the people that changed public opinion, you need to act now. And if you don't act, it's up to you. It's a free country. You may choose to act and you may choose to not. But every day, it's kind of like we're lifting weights. You know, you start off with a 5 kg dumbbell, 2 kg dumbbell, and you can hardly lift it. And then slowly you can lift up the 5 kg, then the 10 kg, then the 12 kg. Then you can lift up the whole bar over your head. Start and make the efforts that you know need to be made, and increase and increase and increase. Because this historical event, the like of this we have never seen. وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى سَيِّدِنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ وَسَلَّمَ.